Hello and welcome to Straight Talk with me, Sifiso Mahlangu. Tonight I bring you the Minister of Home Affairs, Professor Hlengiwe Mkhize. She just took over Melusi Gigaba's post in a department that has its own challenges, having to deal with xenophobia and Afrophobia in this nation. She is the former commissioner of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I aim to aspire whether South Africa has a tendency or a culture of violence amidst the deaths of women in this country. And the policy conference starts in about a month's time. I'll be getting into that detail. We are well on our way to 2019. I'm Sifiso Mahlangu. This is Straight Talk. Please stay tuned. Minister, I welcome you to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
The last time you and I spoke, you were not the Minister of Home Affairs, so congratulations on your appointment.
Oh, thank you very much.
You come from Postal Services,
Telecoms.
Where I'm informed you were also working towards building the post office, the infrastructure within the post office to finally take over SASSA and finally take over the payments for SASSA. Do you think that the post office, even amidst your departure, is ready to take over the SASSA payments?
Well, I don't know what ministers are working on, but basically, as far as I know, government is looking at our own infrastructure in terms of being able to deliver the service. When I say our own, I mean the cooperation amongst government departments to work with the Minister of Social Development. So I wouldn't have the specifics.
Minister, you are a minister who was appointed within what is coined the midnight reshuffle of President Jacob Zuma. Mr. Pravin Gordhan was out, Mr. Melusi Gigaba came in, which left a vacancy in Home Affairs, to which you were appointed as minister. There were many voices to that cabinet reshuffle, and many are still vociferous today. The DA is still calling on President Zuma to retract or reverse his appointment of the Minister of Finance and the Deputy Minister of Finance. Do you think that cabinet reshuffle was an assault on your characters as ministers? Was it because the opposition thought you could not lead? Was it an assault on your leadership, or just the appointment of President Jacob Zuma?
I wouldn't say there was a direct assault or undermining of one's ability. There was a political context which really was problematic. As you know, whenever you are reshuffled to a position, it's also, it's also about looking at people's perception and affirmation. At a human level, you begin to say, is this what I deserve? So, but you have to analyze and realize that there's a context. Because if you look at the reshuffle, there was nothing unique about what happened recently. We've been reshuffled all our lives and deployed all our lives, even to foreign countries. As I'm talking to you now, there are people who were ministers when we started with the first president of President Zuma, who are ambassadors, who didn't want to be ambassadors. So I think there was a political atmosphere which we all understand.
Minister Pravin Gordhan, the then Minister Pravin Gordhan, also raised an intelligence report, what he termed an intelligence report or an unintelligent intelligence report, of why he was fired. And he believed that subjected the president's decision to axe him. Mr. Gordhan was not the only minister who was reshuffled or the only minister who was axed. Why do you think there was such an altercation or such a response for Minister Gordhan and Mr. Mkhize Jonas to stand outside Treasury and join hands with Mr. Zwelinzima Vavi and save SA? Why oppose the president's decision?
Well, it's difficult to really account for people when you haven't spoken to them about their actions. But I must say, in my own view, there has been an unfortunate development where there was a public discourse where Treasury was personalized, almost branded around personalities. And all over the world, you go to Rwanda. We used to go there during Madiba's time. Each time you went, you will find that there are different ministers in strategic position. And the simple explanation will be that there's always a program. A person is deployed to run a program. And the president will then use his prerogative and use people appropriately. So I think what we saw happening was it fit in with this personalization of positions. And it's unfortunate for any country.
I believe when people serve in cabinet, they serve at the discretion of the president. And I think the Constitution awards the president that right. Were you informed, Minister, at any point that there was going to be a reshuffle or that you would be appointed to the cabinet post you hold now?
No, not really. But you're asking a wrong person. I have been reshuffled before. So for me, I knew that depending on where the leadership wants me to serve, they are likely to ask me. Of course, it's not asking because you'll be called. I have my own memories of the president and the secretary general. 2 years after we started, I was at correctional service in 2009, and then they said, now is the time when, you know, the movement will ask you to do something else. Then you say one word, it's finished, it's not negotiable. So you go home, you sleep, you think about it. On the following day, you pick up your spear and you start running.
And so that essentially means you're a cadre of the movement and you follow suit and you follow instruction.
Oh, you start saying, okay, I'm here to serve. According to the leadership, that's where I'm needed to be. And you do it. And some people who were reshuffled at that time, they were not even informed what was the plan. All what they were told is that we will work with you to see how best to make use of your skills.
Minister, you're in a cabinet portfolio that has its challenges. Home affairs in this country has never been easy. But I do add that it's a significantly better home affairs now than it was in the past, than it was in apartheid. Minister, do you think that home affairs is better? Looking at Beitbridge, it has always been challenged. Is it a better portfolio for you?
I think it's a very, very important portfolio for the country. Home affairs has come a long way. Remember, it comes from an era before 1994 where it was just an administration of, you know, these categories of race groups and identity documents, which sometimes were not accurate. It was not important, so to say. But when you look at developments in terms of the new Immigration Act, in terms of the Refugees Act, the treatment of asylum seekers in this country, modernized refugee center, you know, you begin to realize that South Africa is in a mission of ensuring that the identities are secured and that information is accurate. I find that in some areas where there's real success or centers of excellence, it's where they are utilizing technologies. And so they are much more efficient and much more information is secured and much more accurate. I mean, if you look at the project of smart ID cards, which is even issued in partnership with the banks, it's something which was unthought of a few years ago. So I see the department moving forward, when I came, I had to sign a document where we look at the new business plan.
Minister, let's talk about Home Affairs. Talk to me about the international migration policy. What is meant by the international migration policy?
You know, we in a global village, if you look at the world, people before elections, the one item which is always there during campaign is the thinking of the candidate about migrations, how to deal with migrants. You have heard how Trump's views were. You see Brexit. And, you know, with all the campaigns, there is a thinking about, do we close our gates? How do we cooperate with migrants? And so on. So the international migration, the new international migration policy, for me, again, it shows a move which is strategic because it looks also at how to consolidate the movements of people within the continent, something which was missing in the past. South Africa was not looking at migration within Africa. And in line with the AU Vision 2063, countries are even looking at how to make cooperation much easier in terms of identity documents to work and settle in each other's countries. But of course, each country is at the stage of consolidating its own policies. Like in our case, you can see now, you apply for a passport online now. It's all about security now, more than just a piece of paper that you can lose. And it's about creating also family trees properly. You know, this requirement that when you apply, you have to make sure that you put, for a child, you put the names of both parents. All those things about restoring people's dignity.
I think one of the challenges that as the Minister of Home Affairs you'd have to deal with is xenophobia in South Africa, or what I call Afrophobia, because it seems like it's more black on black violence, particularly when South Africans think they are assaulting foreign nationals, but in fact it's just members of the SADC region, or they just deal with Africans. And these are African countries that assisted South Africa greatly in the struggle. Do you think there's a challenge in this country with black on black violence? And what attributed to the Afrophobia that is rampant in our society?
Yeah, but maybe before even we classify the behavior in those strong terms, you know, also within the international migration policy, there is a chapter on the border management. Government has been working on this over years. How do we allow our people to come in? And one of the things is to look at the status of a person when they want to come in. If you're a businessman, you want to set up, all what is required is a certain amount of money, and you are given a permit over a certain period of time. But we have a huge number of people, 24 to 34. I've seen those when I'm in these centers, who really come here low-level skills because they are desperate, because they are looking for opportunities. We are looking for solutions for that category of people. The risk is that without proper controls at our border posts, they've been just getting in, undocumented, illegally, and so they will find their way, looking at the nearest informal settlement, sleeping under the bridge. So government is strengthening the border management, saying we have the police, we have SARS, we have defense, but Home Affairs take over the border management, be there to make sure that people are screened and assisted to get into a country legally and with their clear identities not distorted. Of course, we have to deal with issues of corruption as well, because there have been tendencies where a person, instead of being assisted, somebody will be tempted to say, this one is really vulnerable. And I think there are a few dollars that I can extract from this person and give false documents. People walk in, they are inside, and that's where then you see clashes in terms of they have taken over businesses. They are all over. You know, so there are things that have happened which are not helpful, especially illegal and fraudulent practices on the part of those who want to get residence in South Africa, and sometimes on our part as well, from our officials and security people just colluding.
How are you going to address the issue of xenophobia and Afrophobia?
You know what I said midweek last week? The Department of Home Affairs presented a budget. I presented a budget vote as a Minister of Home Affairs. And one of the things I spoke about is really partnership with not only UN agencies that are helping us, but also with stakeholders at a community level, whereby they understand our policies and they also understand the plight of people who are amongst them. Instead of deciding to say, let's get rid of them, to be our ambassadors and agents, that if a mobile of Home Affairs is coming to your area, 2 weeks ago we were at Twatwa, outside Springs. We expected 500 people, more than 200 were people who came who could be attacked as non-South Africans. But they were brought by our social partners from the community and to be assisted using the mobile, look at their history, try to give them the right papers. So it's doable, but I emphasized during the budget vote, partnership, 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 including the private sector. That the easiest thing is to see a vulnerable person and say, okay, cheap labor, you can be a waiter here, you can do this, but doesn't think for that person that they are not protected, they are not secure, they are illegal. They become victims from all corners.
Have you ever thought that in this country, where we still have rife inequality and we still have a very high unemployment rate, that opening the borders of this country infringes on an onslaught within our own people? I understand our international relations framework, Minister, but also to allow foreign nationals into a country where their own people are suffering. Surely there must be a contradiction in thinking there.
Yeah. You see, that's why you have to understand the migration policy. One of the levels, you have a window for big investors to come to the country. Why are we doing that? When they come here, we have one-stop centers. We have special economic zones. You assist them to settle. Why are you doing that? Investment is critical if you want jobs, skills, and the growth of the GDP. So government has to do that. It's about growth. It's about your most vulnerable people. It's about skills for the youth. So we do that. But the way we manage migration, looking at the status of a person who applies and giving them, if for instance you want to be a refugee and in our assessment your country is stable enough, it's rejected. You are not given. That's what you see at the Desmond Tutu Refugee Center. People are treated with respect. We've invested a lot of technology, but it doesn't mean everybody is allowed in. Deportation, we deport thousands and thousands of people on a daily basis. So the management we're talking about is ensuring that people have strategic permits and there's a reason why they're in the country and for how long. When actually, as we digitize our services, we'll be like countries who could track you down and say, you said you'll be staying at Hotel X, you are not staying there. And you become an unwanted person.
Yeah.
The moment you come next to our border, you are no longer going to be able to freely move around. So I don't think the government is opening the country in a reckless and irrational manner, is actually helping both the nationals, ensuring that they are secured, because otherwise if you don't secure that, you can end up just letting people in.
It would seem like a myopic generalization to say that many foreign nationals come into this country to commit crimes, to distribute drugs, and all of the other things they're accused of. But Minister, if you walk down the streets of Hillbrow, I think, when one walks down the streets of Sunnyside, for instance, there is truth in the statement that many foreign nationals come and commit crimes, heinous crimes in South Africa, something that a South African like you and me would not be able to do in the street of Abuja. And I think that's where the people of South Africa feel let down by the South African government, because it is the South African government that has opened our ports of entry to these foreign nationals. How do you respond to that?
As South Africa, we are like any other country, but we are a victim of our success. Remember, we have a very good economic infrastructure. If you look at our highways, if you look at opportunities for entrepreneurs, opportunities for trading, you have high quality goods that people from other countries, they can get cheap here in a rand. In their countries, they make some money in dollars, francs in some countries. So now that the systems are maturing, they are reliable, we are not going to have people coming here in a disorderly manner, because we have to be very careful. Otherwise, you appear xenophobic as a country. We are not adopting a protectionist approach where you want to close the gates at the time when we are talking, when we are saying we are part of a global village. We can no longer succeed in a small corner in the south, being far from Europe, far from America. Because remember, in economics, even the trades, it depends on proximity. Sometimes you lose opportunities because of where you are located. So Africa needs other Africans. All of us, we need each other to make sure that we trade with each other, we exchange skills, and we engage and communicate. That's why we'll see now Home Affairs, they have special ceremonies for people who have naturalized. One of the things we have to emphasize is that trade with each other, do business with each other, don't see each other as threats. Cooperate. There's value. You can work together. There's a scope of working together. But people who are undocumented, people who are illegal, they are a risk, because they can, if you wanted to plant a bomb, whom do you collude with? It's a vulnerable person who is loitering around the streets with no clear direction, not operating within the law from an entry point. So those are risks which our border management authority is trying to eliminate, to say, as government departments charged with the responsibility from defense, the police, and Home Affairs, let's make sure that the entry points are secured.
Minister, I want to draw your attention to Fireblade. The Oppenheimer family intends on opening their own airport. And for that matter, it will be a port of entry, opening to local and international entrances and exits. How does Home Affairs allow this? And I mean this from the perspective to say, if I've got enough money, I want to have my own airport in Emalahleni, in Witbank, and I can have guests, whoever can come in and out of the country. unregulated or regulated by me because it is my airport, drugs can go through that port of entry. You say that the matter is sub judice now. I've read the statement by the Department of Home Affairs. But how did government allow this to happen?
Well, I call that my baptism with fire. It's my baptism with fire. It's true, the matter is sub judice. I would really prefer that we don't say much about it. We will discuss it once one has got all the facts.
Yeah. I understand the legalities. I'm just concerned that if one has enough money to have their own airport, what does it mean about the security of those living in the area? Because if someone comes into a particular airport that is owned by Mr. X, Sifiso Mahlangu in Witbank, and terrorists can come into that airport, or whatever the case might be, it would put others who are nationals at risk. I think that is the concern of many South Africans.
You know, when we speak about entry points, Home Affairs has a last say, has a responsibility to screen people even at the final point, not only from a point of departure, but also on arrival. It has a last say. In whether you had your own kitchen given somewhere at the airport, the final person, the person will have a final say in terms of those who are landing is Home Affairs. Even when you exit, you might have your own lounge somewhere, but after you have been entertained and everything, before you go to any airline, the Home Affairs official is the one who will determine whether the papers, the requirements, all the requirements of the country are met.
So in fact, it was like the Oppenheimer family giving Home Affairs a job.
No, I'm not discussing now that one. I said the specifics there. That is sub judice. I was just talking in general that whether you have money, you have a kitchen or a lounge,
own airport or whatever,
but at the
Home
end,
Affairs would run the system.
At the end, Home Affairs will have to determine the authenticity of a traveler.
Spoken like a true minister. Minister, this is where part one of our interview ends. Yeah, thank you so much. And there you have it, South Africa and the world, the Minister of Home Affairs. This concludes my part one of the interview. Please join me Sunday, 7 p.m. On NN7 to go deeper. Our discussion revolves around men are trash, violence in this nation. And yes, I will pose the question about Marikana. I'm Sifiso Mahlangu. This was Straight Talk.